Something funny when people talk about 1.0 is that there is two types of people. People like me, who never played it and is like, oh my god, I wish I played it. And people who played 1.0 and are like, I don't want to play this ever again. Hey everyone, it's Plushie. I've been making a lot of searches about the old state of FF14 1.0 as it fascinates me, and KeroArai came to me with 274 screenshots of when he played it and gave me a lot of insights. Something insane about 1.0 is that it felt like it had way much more walks than what you currently have right now. Every maps were a big single one rather than Western Thunderland, Eastern Thunderland, etc. No loading screens. And what I find even cooler, you could basically enter the boat anytime it arrived to the port. It would tell you to leave Salaminsa. You would be standing in the boat in real time as it would get you there, and the closest we have of it right now is the ocean fishing, which isn't really it. Apparently they wanted to add some events so when you're on the boat, monsters could potentially attack it, but it never happened. Also, most cutscenes had way more walk in the game as they were motion tracked, leading into some mind-blowing cutscenes, one where you can see Gaius fighting the science. While when I try to think of motion tracking in our current game, it is very rare, but I can think of some, like that one cutscene in 5.3 if you know which I'm talking about, which made it very memorable. One of the most commonly known but also not so known about is the red Dalamud moon in the sky you've probably seen in 1.0. What is fascinating about it is that it came up out of nowhere. It was around the time they planned on reworking the game and they made it so people can't play FF14 for free, but if they still decided to pay for at least 3 months between the January to October 22 period, they would get exclusive rewards for supporting the devs, such as the Legacy Tattoo, a cheaper monthly fee for subscription, $9.99 for 8 characters per server's option, a special Chocobo skin, your name credited in the Arum Reborn credits, and special cutscenes in FF14 Arum Reborn, and maybe beyond. Like, Yashtola recognizes you, kind of. I'm about to enter the very interesting part, and sorry, I hate to ask this mid through the video, but if you enjoy these videos, please consider subscribing and liking to support me. Thank you so much. In pre-1.19, there was nothing in the sky. In 1.19, a red dot appeared. In 1.20, it grew a bit bigger. And then in 1.21, 1.22, 1.23, and 1.23a, it grew bigger and bigger. And what is super interesting to me is that people did not know what it was. They were not informed on what it was. From what I was told, they even assumed it was the Umbral Moon, and that there were 2 moons, as when you create your character you can pick Astral Moon or Umbral Moon for the birth date. The bigger it got, the more chaotic and apocalyptic the game kept getting. Around the beginning of the game, I think you could see flying ships of the Garleans, but from very far. But when the Red Moon appeared, I started seeing way more frequent traffics of Garlean ships, and it feels so cool when you tell yourselves that you had no flying option at the time already, and you would get to see those ships closer and closer. For the record, you didn't get to see a single Garlean Soldier until very late in the game, and that was near the end of 1.0. Around where the game was getting its own apocalypse, in 1.33 they added Atomos events. They would appear around Ifrit crystals and consume it. You would have to fight the monsters off to save the Ifrits that would turn yellow. They did not know of the devastation it would bring, and players did not know that there would be Bahamut in it. Which is funny because around 1.23, the ultimate boss in the game was Dynamis. She would be in her own area with elevated stairs, and it was a really hard fight for players. And she would use the Mega Flare spell which hinted toward Bahamut before people will reveal the way the world ended. Players were hoping that beating Nile would lead into saving the world from the calamity, which obviously it did not. If you slept a certain amount of time in an inn and logged back in, you would have a nightmare where you see everyone around you dead. The people you know now as the Science, the leaders of the Alliance of Eorzea, and right before you know it, you get killed by Nile herself before you wake up from your nightmare. Something terrible is that granting the fight is really hard. If you wipe in any of the content in the game, you are kicked out of it. A lot of corpses would appear in the Gridania Inn for it, and so it meant that every time you died, you had to resurrect out of instance and re-queue into it for doing it. But I would talk about horrible facts about 1.0 if you all end up enjoying this video. You probably didn't know that either, but Hildibrand already had its own questline in 1.0. And what is intriguing about it is on the last cutscene you see him get blown up from a garden and flying into the sky as he says that he's getting propelled all the way to the Red Moon. It's interesting because us, as new players, we likely started a new Hildibrand questline in its current state without any insight or informations. The first quest is called The Rise and Fall of Gentlemen, and it talks about Nashu, Hildibrand's former assistant that investigates unusual zombies' behavior. She mentions she's been waiting for 5 years for her mentor to return, and she learns that Hildibrand did not survive his journey to Dynamis before, as you know it, you get to see him again in the game. But ultimately, what had to happen, happened. The final days were approaching, and players decided to make a tribute to the game one last time by gathering around the walls of Ul'dah and the Gobu Mouths, wanting to protect the city in their final moments. GMs were amused and played into it as they spawned monsters around the city to animate it, which supposedly all started on Besaid, a server you now know as Balmung. What is unfortunate is Square Enix had planned to adjust 1.0 game to the new engine, so legacy players could see the old cutscenes again, but they never ended up doing it. Anyway, that's it for this video. I hope you learned exciting things and that you enjoyed it. If it intrigued you and you want more, please say so in the comments. Whether you want a documentary or a video talking about the 274 screenshots KeroArai sent me, and thanks to them again for sharing it, or facts about how bad 1.0 was back then. If you enjoyed this video, I would recommend you to watch my other video, 9 Secrets in Final Fantasy XIV, and with that said, I hope you'll have a great day. See you, bye.